She stared at the paper in her trembling hands. The words blurred together, but 3 letters stood out like a brand burned into her soul. HIV. Positive. Her mind raced backward. 3 weeks. 3 weeks since that weekend. 3 weeks since she'd flown across the country to meet him. The man who sent her good morning texts. The man who remembered her daughter's name. The man who made her feel seen again. And now this. She grabbed her phone with shaking fingers and dialed his number. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. She opened their message thread, dozens of conversations, late-night voice notes, plans they'd made together. All of it gone. His profile had vanished. His number disconnected. Even his emails bounced back like he never existed. But he did exist, and he left her with something she'd carry for the rest of her life. The question that haunted her then and haunts us now is simple but terrifying. How many others are there? Let's call her Sarah. That's not her real name, but her story is real. And it could happen to anyone. Sarah was 52 years old when this happened. A mother of 2 grown children. A woman who'd spent 25 years in a marriage that slowly crumbled under the weight of emotional distance and broken promises. When the divorce finally came, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, almost relieving. Her kids had moved out years before. Her son was in Seattle working in tech. Her daughter had just gotten engaged in Boston. Sarah was proud of them, so proud. But the empty house echoed with silence she wasn't prepared for. She threw herself into work. Marketing manager at a mid-sized firm. Good benefits, decent pay. But the job drained her. Client calls that went nowhere. Meetings about meetings. The kind of work that keeps you busy, but leaves you feeling empty. Her friends noticed. They saw the exhaustion in her eyes. The way she'd zone out during lunch conversations. The forced smile when they asked how she was doing. One Friday night, over wine and too much honesty, her closest friend Rebecca said the words that would change everything. You need to get back out there. Just try. One date? What's the worst that could happen? Sarah laughed it off at first. Online dating at her age? With her stretch marks and gray roots and reading glasses? The idea seemed absurd. But that night, alone in her apartment, scrolling through her phone while some Netflix show played in the background, she thought, why not? She downloaded the app, chose a simple profile picture, nothing fancy, just her at a friend's wedding, smiling genuinely. She wrote a bio that was honest. Divorced. 2 kids. Loves hiking and old movies. Looking for genuine connection. She hit submit and tossed her phone aside, not expecting much. That was her first mistake. The messages started almost immediately, but most of them were disappointing. Generic compliments, crude propositions, men who clearly hadn't read her profile. She was about to delete the app when a message came through that was different. I noticed you mentioned hiking. Have you ever been to Zion National Park? I went last spring, and it completely changed how I see the world. It was thoughtful, specific. He'd actually read her profile. She clicked on his picture. A man around her age, maybe a few years older. Salt and pepper hair. Kind eyes. His profile said he was a project manager in Phoenix. Divorced. 1 daughter in college. He liked photography, cooking, and long drives with no destination. She responded, and he wrote back within the hour. Their conversation flowed naturally. No pressure. No red flags. He asked about her kids. Shared stories about his daughter's struggles with choosing a major. He talked about his divorce with honesty, not bitterness, just acceptance. Days turned into weeks. They texted every morning. Good morning messages with coffee cup emojis. Questions about her day that felt genuine. Voice notes when typing felt too impersonal. Then came the video calls. The first one was awkward in the way first video calls always are. Where do you look? How much should you smile? But within minutes, the awkwardness faded. He looked exactly like his photos. Same kind eyes. Same gentle voice. They talked for 2 hours that night. then 3 hours the next week. Then, almost every evening, he told her about his hobbies, restoring old furniture, trying new recipes, taking weekend trips to small towns. He sent her pictures of a bookshelf he'd built, a pasta dish he'd attempted and failed at, a sunset from a random road in New Mexico. Everything felt real. He never pushed, never made her uncomfortable. When she mentioned she wasn't ready to meet in person yet, he said he understood completely. No pressure. They'd meet when it felt right. And after 6 weeks of daily conversations, it finally did feel right. "I'd really love to meet you," he said during a video call. "No expectations, just coffee or dinner, whatever you're comfortable with." Sarah hesitated. But looking at his face on her screen, hearing the sincerity in his voice, she thought, why not? "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." His smile was everything she'd hoped to see. But while Sarah was falling for a man she thought she knew, she had no idea who he really was. Let's call him Mark. That's not his real name either. But the darkness in his story is very, very real. Mark wasn't always like this. At least, that's what he told himself. There was a woman once, years ago, someone he'd loved deeply. Someone who'd promised forever and then disappeared without explanation. No closure. No reason. Just gone. The betrayal shattered something inside him. He spiraled. Therapy didn't help. Friends tried to reach him, but he pushed them away. The anger festered. The bitterness grew. And somewhere in that darkness, a twisted logic took root. If he could be hurt like that, why couldn't he do the same to others? But it wasn't enough to just ghost someone. That was too simple, too clean. He wanted them to feel what he felt. Confusion, betrayal, a wound that would never fully heal. So he started researching. Forums, articles, medical journals. He learned about transmission rates, about window periods, about how to time everything perfectly. He began creating profiles. Different names, different cities, always targeting women in their 40s and 50s. Women who were divorced or widowed. Women who were lonely. Women who wanted to believe in second chances. He studied them, learned their patterns, mirrored their interests, built trust slowly, patiently, and when the time was right, he'd arrange a meeting. One weekend, one night, one encounter. Then he'd vanish. He'd done it before, more than once, more than twice. Each time, he felt a sick sense of satisfaction. Not pleasure, not joy, just control. He told himself they deserved it, that they were naive, that they should have known better. But the truth was simpler and far more horrifying. He enjoyed the power of ruining someone's life without them ever knowing why. And Sarah was next. Sarah's hands were shaking as she boarded the plane to Phoenix. She'd told her daughter about the trip casually, like it was no big deal, just meeting a friend. Her daughter had been supportive but cautious. "Text me when you land, and send me his address, just in case." Sarah had laughed it off, but she did it anyway. Mark picked her up from the airport. In person, he was even more charming. Warm hug, easy smile. He carried her bag to his car without being asked. He'd planned the entire weekend. Dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant. A morning hike at a nearby trail. Brunch at a local spot he swore made the best pancakes in Arizona. Everything felt perfect. His apartment was clean but lived in. Photos of his daughter on the shelves. Books stacked neatly. A half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. "I'm not the neatest person," he joked, "but I tried to make it presentable for you." Sarah felt herself relax. This was real. He was real. That night, after wine and conversation and laughter that felt genuine, they ended up in his bedroom. She hesitated for a moment, not because she didn't want to, but because it had been so long since she'd been intimate with anyone. Since she'd let herself be vulnerable. He was patient, gentle, attentive. Afterward, lying in his arms, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hopeful. "I'm really glad you came," he whispered. "Me too," she said. She fell asleep believing she'd found something rare, something worth holding on to. But while she slept, Mark stared at the ceiling, already planning his exit. Sarah flew home Sunday evening with a heart full of hope. She texted him when she landed. "Made it home safe. Thank you for an amazing weekend." He responded within minutes. "I had the best time. Let's plan the next trip soon." They exchanged a few more messages that night. Then she went to bed, exhausted but happy. Monday morning, she sent him a good morning text. No response. She figured he was busy at work. She didn't worry. Tuesday, she tried calling. Straight to voicemail. Wednesday, she checked his profile. It was gone. She refreshed the app, logged out and back in, searched his name. Nothing. Her stomach dropped. She tried his email. Bounced back. Address not found. She tried his phone again. Disconnected. Panic set in. Had something happened to him? An accident? A family emergency? But deep down, she knew he'd left. On purpose. She replayed every moment of the weekend in her mind. Every conversation. Every touch. Every promise. Had she done something wrong? Said something that pushed him away? She felt humiliated. Stupid. Used. Her friends tried to console her. "He's a jerk. You dodged a bullet." But it didn't feel that way. It felt like she'd been shattered and no one could see the pieces. She forced herself to move on. To stop checking her phone every 5 minutes. To accept that some people are just cruel. But then the symptoms started. At first, it was just fatigue. The kind that makes you feel like you're moving through water. Sarah chalked it up to stress. The emotional toll of being ghosted. The long hours at work. Then came the night sweats. She'd wake up drenched. Her sheets soaked through. She'd change and go back to sleep, thinking it was just hormones. Perimenopause. Maybe. The fever came next. Low grade but persistent. Her body ached in ways that felt wrong. She went to her primary care doctor. He ran some basic tests. Probably just a virus. Get some rest. Drink fluids. She tried, but the symptoms didn't go away. They got worse. She couldn't concentrate at work. Her coworkers asked if she was okay. She lied and said she was fine. Late at night, alone in her apartment, she'd Google her symptoms. Every search led her down a darker path. Chronic fatigue syndrome, autoimmune disorders, lymphoma. She told herself she was overreacting. But a voice in the back of her mind kept whispering, something is very, very wrong. After 2 weeks of feeling like her body was betraying her, she went to a different doctor. A woman who listened carefully, who didn't dismiss her concerns. "I want to run a full panel of tests," the doctor said, "just to rule everything out." Sarah agreed, relieved someone was finally taking her seriously. She gave blood, answered questions about her medical history, her recent activities. "Have you had any new sexual partners in the last few months?" the doctor asked, her tone professional but pointed. Sarah's stomach twisted. "Yes. One. About 3 weeks ago." The doctor nodded, making a note. "We'll include an STI screening in the panel." Sarah left the clinic feeling nauseous. She told herself it was nothing, that she was being paranoid. But when the doctor's office called a week later and asked her to come in person, not just for results over the phone, she knew. She knew before she even walked through the door. The doctor's face said everything before her mouth did. "Sarah, I need you to sit down." She sat. Her hands gripped the edge of the chair so hard her knuckles turned white. "Your test results came back. You tested positive for HIV." The words hung in the air like a blade. Sarah shook her head. "No. That's not possible. I'm not. I know this is a shock," the doctor said gently. "But the test is very accurate. We'll run a confirmatory test to be absolutely sure. But, no." Sarah's voice cracked. "There has to be a mistake. Based on the timeline you gave me, the exposure likely occurred 3 weeks ago. That aligns with when you started experiencing symptoms. 3 weeks ago, the weekend in Phoenix, the man who disappeared, the man who vanished without a trace." Sarah's chest tightened. She couldn't breathe. The room spun. He knew, she whispered. He knew, and he didn't tell me. The doctor's expression shifted from sympathy to something harder. Anger. If he knowingly exposed you without disclosing his status, that's a crime in many states. A crime. Sarah felt like she was drowning. What do I do? She asked, her voice barely audible. First, we start you on treatment immediately. Antiretroviral therapy. The sooner we start, the better. HIV is manageable now. People live long, full lives with proper treatment. Manageable, long, full lives, but not the life she'd planned. Not the life she'd dreamed of. And second, the doctor continued, her voice firm, you need to report this. To the police. To public health. This man is dangerous. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. She left the clinic with a prescription, a stack of pamphlets, and a rage so deep it burned in her chest. He'd taken something from her, something she could never get back. And she was going to make sure he never did it to anyone else. If this story is making you feel something, anger, fear, empathy, hit that like button right now. And if you think someone you know needs to hear this warning, share this video. Don't let this happen to someone you care about. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, scrolling through every conversation she'd ever had with him. Every photo, every detail. His name was fake. His profile was gone. But people don't just disappear without leaving traces. She hired a private investigator the next morning. A woman named Linda who specialized in online fraud and identity cases. I've seen cases like this before, Linda said during their first meeting. More often than you'd think. Linda started digging. Reverse image searches, phone number traces, IP address logs. Within a week, she found something. The same man, different name, different city. Same photos, just cropped or filtered differently. Then another profile, and another. Each one targeting women in their 40s and 50s. Each one building trust over weeks. Each one arranging in-person meetings. Linda reached out to a few of the women through mutual connections and support groups, and they came forward. One by one, women began sharing their stories. A woman in Denver who'd met him 2 years ago. A woman in Nashville. Same story. A woman in Portland. Identical experience. There were more. At least 8 that they could confirm. Possibly more. Who were too afraid or ashamed to come forward. Sarah felt sick. But she also felt something else. Determination. She contacted the police, filed a formal report, handed over everything Linda had found. The detective assigned to her case was a man in his 50s named Raymond. He listened carefully, his jaw tightening as she spoke. This is intentional transmission, he said. In this state, that's a felony. We're going to find him. Sarah nodded. Good. Because I'm not done. The investigation moved quickly once law enforcement got involved. Digital forensics experts traced his accounts. They found patterns, IP addresses linked to the same devices, payment methods tied to a single source. They discovered he used prepaid phones, bought them with cash, rotated them every few months. But he'd made mistakes, small ones. A hotel booking under a credit card he'd used before. A car rental tied to his real name. His real name wasn't Mark. It was David Brennan, 58 years old, formerly married, no criminal record until now. He'd been doing this for at least 5 years, moving from city to city, creating profiles, building trust, disappearing. Medical records, obtained through subpoena, confirmed he'd been diagnosed with HIV 7 years prior. He knew. He'd always known. And he'd chosen not to disclose, not to protect his victims, not to take precautions. He'd chosen to harm them deliberately. The victim count kept growing. 11 confirmed cases. 3 more suspected. Each woman had the same story. Met him online, felt safe, traveled to see him, slept with him. Then, nothing. Some had been diagnosed immediately. Others hadn't been tested until months later. their symptoms dismissed as stress or aging. The pattern was clear. The intent was undeniable. David Brennan wasn't just a predator. He was a calculating, methodical, remorseless one. And Sarah was going to help bring him down. Before we continue, I want to pause for a moment. If you're watching this, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments. We're building a community here, a space where we can share these stories, learn from them, and look out for each other. So let us know. Where are you watching from? David Brennan thought he was untouchable. He'd gotten away with it for years, vanished without consequences, moved to a new city, started again. But this time, the police were watching. They created a decoy profile. Someone who fit his pattern exactly. Divorced. Early 50s. Vulnerable but hopeful. Looking for genuine connection. They used the same apps he frequented. Posted photos that matched his preferences. Wrote a bio that would catch his attention. And they waited. It took 3 weeks, but he took the bait. A message appeared on the decoy account. Thoughtful, specific, charming. I noticed you mentioned hiking. The same line. The same approach. The undercover officer, posing as the decoy played along, responded carefully, mirrored his pacing. They texted for days. Then video called, using a woman from the department who fit the profile. David seemed relaxed, comfortable. He had no idea he was being watched. After 2 weeks, he suggested a meeting. I'd love to meet in person. Maybe you could visit me in Tucson? The officer agreed. A date was set. A location chosen, a public restaurant, but one the police could monitor closely. Sarah wanted to be there, to see his face when he realized his game was over. Detective Raymond said no at first. It's too risky. You're a victim. You shouldn't have to. I'm not just a victim, Sarah interrupted. I'm the reason you're catching him. I deserve to be there. Raymond hesitated, then nodded. Okay. But you stay in the surveillance van. You don't go near him. Sarah agreed. The night of the meeting, she sat in the back of an unmarked van, headphones on, watching the live feed from multiple cameras. She saw him arrive. Same salt and pepper hair, same kind eyes, same easy smile. He looked normal. That's what terrified her most. He looked like someone you'd trust. The undercover officer met him at the restaurant entrance. They hugged. He held the door open for her. A gentleman. They sat at a corner table. Ordered drinks. Made small talk. He was charming, attentive, asking questions, laughing at her jokes. Everything Sarah remembered. Then, carefully, the officer steered the conversation. I have to admit, she said, I'm a little nervous. I've been hurt before. I just want to make sure we're both being honest with each other. David nodded sympathetically. I completely understand. I've been hurt too. But I promise, I'm not here to play games. That's good to hear, she said. I also want to be transparent about health. I got tested recently, clean bill of health. Have you been tested? A flicker of something crossed his face. Hesitation. Then, the smile returned. Of course. I'm very careful about that. A lie. The officer leaned in. So, if we decide to, take things further, we're both safe? Absolutely, he said, without missing a beat. Another lie. In the van, Sarah felt her hands curl into fists. The officer gave a subtle signal, a tug on her earlobe. Within seconds, plainclothes officers moved in. David Brennan, you're under arrest. His face went white. What? There's been a mistake. I don't. You have the right to remain silent. He tried to pull away. Officers grabbed his arms. Handcuffs clicked into place. He looked around wildly, searching for an exit that didn't exist. Sarah watched from the van, her heart pounding. It was over. David Brennan was charged with multiple counts of intentional transmission of HIV. Each count carried years in prison. The trial lasted 3 months. 11 women testified. Sarah was one of them. She stood in that courtroom and looked him in the eye. She told her story. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She was angry. And she wanted him to see it. The jury deliberated for less than a day. Guilty, on all counts. He was sentenced to 25 years. It wasn't enough. It could never be enough. But it was something. Before we continue, drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you in New York? London? Tokyo? Let us know your city or country. We want to know. This story is reaching people everywhere who need to hear it. Sarah's life didn't go back to normal. It couldn't. She started treatment immediately after her diagnosis. The medication worked. Her viral load became undetectable within months. Undetectable means untransmittable. She could live a full life without passing the virus to anyone else. But the emotional scars ran deeper. She joined a support group, met other women who'd been through similar experiences. They shared their pain, their anger, their healing. Sarah started speaking publicly about her story. Not for pity, not for attention, but to warn others, because this isn't a rare story. It happens more often than we think. Online dating can be wonderful. It can lead to real connections, real love, but it can also be dangerous. Trust should be earned slowly. Video calls aren't enough. Meeting in public isn't enough. Ask questions. Verify identities. Trust your instincts. And always prioritize your health. Get tested regularly. Ask partners about their status. Don't assume safety. Sarah's daughter asked her once, months after the trial, if she regretted that weekend. Sarah thought about it. Really thought about it. I regret trusting him, she said. But I don't regret trying. I don't regret hoping. Because hope isn't the problem. Predators are. Today, Sarah is thriving. She's still in treatment, still processing the trauma, but she's also stronger, angrier, more determined to make sure what happened to her doesn't happen to anyone else. She runs a nonprofit now, an organization that provides resources for survivors of intimate partner violence and STI-related assault. She speaks at colleges, at conferences, at support groups. She refuses to be silenced. And David Brennan? He sits in a cell where he belongs. If you or someone you know has been a victim of intentional transmission or non-disclosure, there are resources available. Contact your local health department. Reach out to legal advocates. You are not alone. And if this story made you think twice about online safety, good. That's the point. Be careful out there. Be smart, be safe. And never, ever let someone make you feel ashamed for hoping. Because hope isn't the problem. Monsters are.